Oh, okay. People are starting to come in. Welcome, everyone. We're going to wait just a couple of minutes for people to come in and get settled. I know these Zoom meetings aren't as frequent as they were in past years. So we will just give a couple of minutes and we'll get started soon. We appreciate everyone taking time during the middle of the day to join us to talk about our facility challenges, possible solutions, and the funding options that we have. We are recording this session, so if you have friends and neighbors who weren't able to join today, this will be posted on our website. We'll share it out, but please help us get the word out. Our goal here is to make sure everyone in this community has the information about what's happening with our schools so they can provide input and help the board make a decision on whether to move this to a referendum. I am Kathy Kajigian. I'm the Chief Communications Officer for District 109. At the end, we will be taking questions. So please, please, if questions come to you while we're talking, drop them in the Q&A and we will answer all questions at the end. Again, as I said, we're recording this. So please help us share this information. And right now I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Michael Simic.
Thank you for joining us. We have a number of things to present to you today, and I get to kick it off here. So we're going to talk about how we got to this point, the recommendation that has been made to me and then me to the Board of Ed. We're going to talk about how you can provide your feedback and then also what is next for us. A little bit of background. The last time the district put a referendum to the public was 20 years ago. Many of you may remember Nick Begley. He served for nearly 2 decades on the 109 school board, and he was the spiritual and practical leader of that referendum, which increased the operating rate of the district, which is different than what we will be asking of the community. An operating rate increase allows the district to pay its bills, pay staff and whatnot, but also to be utilized for capital improvements. So at that time, a number of promises were made to the community. They would end the 14 years of deficit spending that they had been experiencing, that they would create a maintenance plan to extend the useful life of the school buildings, which they absolutely did. Many of you know the various uh, renovations and improvements that have been made to art rooms, and the science labs were added to the middle schools, the auditorium at Caruso, and many other improvements over the past 20 years. They also said that they would not come back for at least 5 to 8 years for any additional referendum. Now, keep in mind that was 20 years ago, so that 5 to 8 years is well lapsed, and the subsequent boards and administrators kept the promises made back in 2005 and have been very, very prudent with district dollars. We are in extremely strong financial condition right now. John Filippi will talk about that as part of his presentation relative to district finances. And before I head off and hand over to John Filippi, I want to make sure and introduce the other folks here. You see Kathy Kajigian, Chief Communications Officer, John Filippi. John is the leader of the master facility plan and also an important figure in the task force that we utilized. Melanie Newman in communications works with Kathy. Tim Ryan is in charge of buildings and grounds, does all manner of everything for the district. Historically, worked on many of the improvements as the site superintendent, and we were lucky enough to bring him on board as our B&G person. And then finally, Kate Joyce and Rosie Bonner, members of the 109 School Board. They're two of the 7 school board members that the community has elected, and two of the only 7 that can decide to place an agenda item on a referendum on a ballot for the public to vote on. And so I'll hand off to John Filippi.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. As Mike shared, my name is John Filippi. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operations. I've been with the district for 15 years now, first serving as the Assistant Principal at Caruso Middle School, then the Principal at Shepherd before spending the last 8 years in the district's finance office. And what I want to take you through today is really a process that's been 5 years in the making. And it began in 2022 when the district conducted an operational and educational facility assessment. And what that was a comprehensive look at all of our district facilities from an operational lens, looking at things like building envelope, the roofs, the brick, windows, doors, but also looking at the mechanical systems in the district. So HVAC, condition of plumbing, conditioning of electrical, really getting an understanding of how well the building infrastructure was supporting the needs of the district, but then also looking at how well our facilities were supporting the work of our teachers to support our students each day. So looking at how our facilities were supporting or hindering the learning that's happening in our buildings each day. And after we had a clear picture of our buildings, we formed a steering committee in 2023. And their charge, and that was a group that was comprised of administrators, of teachers, of parents, of board members. And their charge was really to review those needs that emerged through the facility assessment, but consider all possible options that could solve the challenges that were before the district. And in 2024, we further refined options that the steering committee advanced as possible solutions. And what that looked like was bringing on an owner's rep who was providing additional insight and testing cost estimates that were initially provided by our architect, and also working with our financial advisor at Raymond James on possible financing strategies. And then in 2025, we formed a referendum task force. And that was a group that was comprised of just over 30 community members that were diverse in their positions, whether they had students in the district or had students who had graduated from the district previously. And their job was to really vet and look at the strategies that were before us and decide and advise on what we should communicate and test in the community. And that's what we're doing right now. And should the community weigh in with support and indicate support for this plan, the board would contemplate a referendum in 2026. But as I shared, we started with facility assessments. So the district has 6 schools that serve just over 2,700 students and just over 400 staff members. Our newest facility is Caruso Middle School, constructed in 1969, and our oldest facility is Kipling Elementary School, constructed in 1949. And as you look at this slide, you see that there are a number of issues. Some touch on all schools, for instance, safety and security. Safety and security is an issue that continues to evolve for schools. So I've shared in a lot of our informational sessions that, for most adults, we were accustomed to going to school where even the exterior doors of the school weren't locked during school hours. We couldn't fathom that to be the case today. But even now, in the last 5 years, the recommendation has become that we should have all doors closed and locked within the school during the school day. And that creates a number of challenges in terms of access control. So we have opportunities to improve access control. We have opportunities to improve visitor management and our ability to segment buildings. But as we look at all of our facilities, really, the crux of the issues are generated at our 4 elementary campuses, and I would touch on a few areas that really summarize the most significant needs. And the first is we have significant facility challenges associated with core infrastructure in our buildings, particularly at the elementary schools. And what that means is our facilities are of an age where the sewer piping, the main water supply piping, is beyond useful life. And the buildings were constructed in a manner such that for us to get to that core infrastructure and replace it, we cannot do that in a short summer month period. In most cases in our elementary schools, our sewer piping is directly under corridor floors or is sandwiched between additions that have been added to the buildings over time. And that means that for us to get to that, we need to have a protracted period of time where we can be doing construction and get heavy equipment in to do that work. Our supply piping in our buildings is also challenged. These buildings were constructed in an era where a lot of the supply piping is galvanized steel piping, which corrodes over time and limits water pressure. We have issues with inadequate electrical service. When our buildings were put into service, if you can imagine, we had needs like, convenience outlets for cleaning the schools, some lights in the classroom. Well, we've gone to, a one-to-one environment where, we have charging needs for students, for teachers, we have interactive displays, and we're really taxed on what we can do. And of course, our HVAC infrastructure is a significant challenge. The buildings, the only school that was constructed with air conditioning and purpose built to be air conditioning was Caruso, and that system works quite well, as you would imagine. The other buildings were retrofitted with air conditioning 15 years ago, and that equipment is coming to the end of useful life, and it is challenged in its ability to provide adequate cooling for our spaces. We also have challenges with our ability to heat the spaces as well. A good example of how this infrastructure challenges can impact us is just 2 weeks ago, I got a call at 6 o'clock in the morning from Tim's team that we were building a swimming pool in front of South Park Elementary School. The main water supply piping that was headed into the building had ruptured. And Tim's team did a great job of quickly pressure testing the building and making a decision that we could open school that day. We were uncertain if we would hold water pressure throughout the day, because if we lose water pressure, kids can't wash their hands, we can't flush toilets, etc. But fortunately, where the break occurred, we were able to keep school open that day, and we were able to patch that pipe at the end of the school day and open school as normal the next day. Challenge for us is that there are, significant piping within the buildings and below concrete slabs in our facilities, such that if that break was not in an easily accessible spot, we could have been looking at a protracted school closure. And that's one of the real issues that we need to be upfront about when we look at our building infrastructure. We also have challenges with inadequate space in our facilities. And one of the things that I frequently share is that our buildings were constructed in an era where there was no special education. And as education has changed over time, education has become much more than reading and writing. It's become a space where we support students with diverse learning needs. It's we all take for granted, and we're accustomed to all of the ancillary supports that we provide to our students because it's the right thing to do. So we have social workers, we have psychologists. We're very proud in our community that we serve all of our students in our district and in our home schools. But that means that we need greater spaces to serve students with complex needs so that physical therapists and occupational therapists, teachers' assistants, and special educators can work with our students. So even though over time our enrollment has declined in past years, we are challenged for space based off of the programs and the supports that we provide to students in 2025. Question that's frequently come up when we talk about space challenges is what will enrollment look like for the school district as we look into the future? Annually, we partner with the village to have a demographer conduct a study of the school district. And we're very pleased to report that each year our demographer is within 1 or 2 students of their projections. So they're very accurate. They're projecting that our enrollment is going to remain stable for the next decade. And we also have significant issues as it pertains to accessibility and the Americans with Disabilities Act. So when we look at our facilities and we consider how we can solve some of the challenges that are facing us, we have to understand that given the era our schools were constructed in, we are grandfathered in to a lot of the code issues. But as soon as we begin renovating these spaces and we begin working on these schools in earnest, we're going to trigger requirements for us to bring the buildings to modern code. And that is very challenging and it can be very costly. And in particular, Wilmot is our most challenging facility in terms of accessibility because the building has 11 different levels and famously has a second story elevator with 4 steps. So when we look about renovating our way out of some of those issues, it becomes very costly. So as I shared previously, we formed a steering committee in 2023 to really solve or to generate ideas about how we could meaningfully solve all of the challenges that were in front of the district. And really it started with establishing a baseline of what would the spend be for the school district if it essentially did nothing. What dollars would need to be invested into these buildings to keep them open and to keep students and staff warm, safe, and dry. And that became the baseline upon which the steering committee tested a lot of other ideas. And they considered things like reboundarying the district and seeking to close one of the 6 schools in the district to seek more efficiency in how we supported the students of the district. We contemplated things like transitioning to grade level centers. And what a grade level center is essentially all kindergarten through first grade students, for instance, may attend one school in the district and then they may transfer to another building in second through third. And we tried to look at ways that we could be more efficient with the space that the district had through renovating and adding to schools to support those grade level centers. We looked at the feasibility of moving from 6 campuses to 2 new pre-K through 8 buildings and seeing if there were efficiencies that could be achieved there. And we looked at renovating and adding to our existing campuses, and we looked at new construction elementary options with renovations at the middle schools. And at the end of the day, there were really 3 options that emerged as viable options to be pursued by the district and were advanced by the steering committee. And that included keeping a baseline of, a quote unquote do nothing option, which is looking at what would the price tag be over those 2 decades to keep the buildings going. And what would that mean for our schools and for the future of the school district and the community's finances? We looked at renovating and adding to the existing schools, and we looked at new construction elementary options with renovations at the middle schools. And then we moved into 2024, and the goal in 2024 was to really refine those options. So the architects began work on conceptual designs, and we'll look at some of those today. And those are intended to be broad, kind of overviews of what a new construction or what a renovated option might be. And behind the scenes, there's work in terms of how they've matched that to the program, meaning how many sections of each grade level in a building and what are all the different supports that a building may need, whether it's a building that offers preschool or a building that offers spaces for psychologists or physical therapists to work from. But really kind of a broad overview, not an architectural design, not construction documents, but demonstrating the viability of these various options. We worked to refine our cost estimates in 2024, bringing on an owner's rep in a firm called CCS, and one of their core expertise is estimating construction. And then we looked at various funding options, working with our partners at Raven James.
And then moving into 2025, we took those refined options and brought them to a representative referendum task force. As John said, it was about 35 community members from current families in the district, those who no longer have kids in the district, grandparents of the district, community leaders, single family, multifamily. We had a diverse group. One group that we have heard from throughout the process is close Walden neighbors, and there were none on the task force. So we've kind of had our own Walden neighbor task force to talk through the impact of that solution. So we'll talk through what that looks like. And their role was to make a recommendation to Mr. Simic about the option that they felt the community would support, not necessarily the option that they felt was best for their own personal interests or, considering all of the impacts on our community, what would the community support? And we had three meetings. First one where they talked about facility challenges, and we took the task force on a tour of our facilities. If you have been at one of our in-person information sessions, you've also taken a tour. We have one last in-person session tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. At Walden, and Tim Ryan, our Director of Buildings and Grounds, is a fabulous tour guide if you can attend that session. Our next meeting was possible solutions and the funding options. And then the third meeting was taking all the information that they had and coming to consensus. And they asked great questions. They met in small groups, whole groups, had really robust discussion. All voices in that room were heard. And then they came to consensus on this plan that we're bringing to the community that we've talked about in great deal on our website, in sessions, and in meetings since September.
So the options that were considered by the referendum task force really included four different plans. The first was the quote unquote do nothing option, or the maintenance only option. And that was estimated to be $177 million over the next 2 decades to keep the buildings going in their current iteration. We looked at an option that considered renovations and additions that was $208.3 million. We looked at what we'll talk about in depth today, which is the 2+2 plan, which was the recommendation from the task force. It was $245.1 million. And I'll also touch on the 3+1 plan, which was a bigger plan, which was $277.2 million. There was broad agreement, I think, in the task force that that was the option that they wanted, but their charge was to really make a decision about what did they believe the community would support, and that was the 2+2 plan. I'll just make a quick note about, if you want to step back one slide, Kathy, just a quick note about uh, some of the options that were dismissed, and maintenance only was dismissed because of the high price tag and a realization of what the community would get for those dollars spent. And what's important to note on the maintenance only option is that that does not include any full replacement of that core infrastructure that is so challenged in these facilities. So on a maintenance only approach, there is no way for the district to replace sewer piping. There's no way for the district to replace, writ large supply piping. There are some things the district can do in terms of HVAC replacement, but those were costly. And what was considered is that, the district would be expending all of the resources that it can bring to bear as we look at these potential financing solutions and really be in the same place it is today, 15 or 20 years from now, and having depleted all of those resources and the district's ability to contribute through normal, its normal annual tax levy. On the renovation and addition side, this option was dismissed by the task force. And I think it's important to note that really one of the chief reasons that this option is less expensive than the 2+2 plan is it simply does not solve the issue at Walden Elementary School. Walden is the district's smallest facility. It's about 55,000 square feet. And to support our students and staff and the programs that are offered at that school, it really should be 75,000 square feet. So it made some modest improvements, but given the layout of that campus, it was not possible to add adequate square footage through that addition process. So that's why the price tag is cheaper. The task force also looked at this from a logistical lens, and there were some serious challenges with renovating and adding to these facilities while trying to keep each of these schools open. It means that we would need to move approximately a quarter to a third of students and staff to mobile classrooms on each of the sites. It would extend construction at each of these buildings, not from a 14 to 16 month period, but from a 3 to 4 year period, and we would have our students and our staff moving in and out of an active construction zone on a daily basis. Of course, trying to replace sewer piping, trying to replace main supply piping means that we need to get behind concrete block walls and below the concrete slab. So we would be saw cutting and jackhammering into floors adjacent to classrooms where kids are trying to learn to read and do math. And so that was not a desirable option. We move forward, I wanted to offer a bit more information about the 3+1 plan. We heard a lot from Walden neighbors about a desire for any newly constructed school to really remain at the exact location where Walden is. And the challenge for any of these sites is that to construct a new facility or to do a gut renovation of a facility, we need to have somewhere for students to go. Walden does not lend itself to being a campus that is saved. It really needs to be replaced given its condition, given its size, given its layout. But in the 3+1 plan, instead of Walden being used as a location to house Kipling, because we could construct a new Kipling school near where the current district office is and where the historic village site is, where that is a location that the school district owns, then Kipling could serve as a swing site for Walden students while Walden is demolished and reconstructed in the same location. But it means a higher tax impact because the overall cost of the 3+1 plan is significantly higher than the 2+2 plan. So it was a tax impact of roughly $682 per 10,000 versus $536 per $10,000 of taxes paid in the 2+2 plan. However, when we do public opinion polling, we will include this as an option that the community can weigh in on. So to speak directly to the task force recommendation, and I'll move from bottom to top here. At our middle schools, we have more targeted work that needs to be done. At Caruso, Caruso has a bit less than Shepherd does in terms of scope. There are needs for safety and security enhancements at Caruso. And what that looks like is redesigning the visitor management in the front lobby of the school. It's something that's needed at all 6 schools where our front office staff have better lines of sight to manage visitors coming to our facilities. But it also includes adding things like access control throughout the building. So swipe cards on classroom doors, ability to segment the building in the event of an emergency. One of the challenges at Caruso is that while the air conditioning works really well, it has very little natural light. It was constructed in an era, for whatever reason, they didn't put a lot of windows that are directly into classrooms. So we have a lot of classrooms in that building that lack natural light. There's not an easy way for us to solve that at Caruso, but what we can do is add some floor-to-ceiling windows at the end of hallway corridors that really bring more natural light in. It's something that we did when we did a renovation project in collaboration with the Park District on the auditorium, and it makes a big difference in how the space feels. And then Caruso needs some special education space renovations. And so we are going to repurpose a portion of the building that's currently serving as the teacher's lounge and a storage area to redesign and provide new special education classrooms while we relocate the teacher's lounge to a centralized location in the school. At Shepherd, they need the same safety and security enhancements, but really the bulk of the work needs to happen on the 2-story wing. So if you drive past Shepherd, that 2-story wing is the original construction in 1961, and it has largely been untouched since that time. So it needs a full renovation. It needs new mechanical systems for heating and cooling. It needs a new roof, and it needs new finishes throughout that area of the building. Kipling and South Park would get super renovations with additions, and Walden and Wilmot would be new construction facilities. And as I talk you through these preliminary concepts, I just really want to share that these are preliminary concepts. These are first ideas, or in some instances, second or third ideas that our architects have contemplated for what these sites might look like. For the district to go down the road of full architectural designs and construction documents is a very costly process. And so we're not going to undertake that work until the community has an opportunity to weigh in and share their thoughts on this. So if, polling were to suggest that the community wants to proceed with this, we will get that process started and work through various iterations. I do want to share also that we know that we are a big neighbor to those folks in the community that live close to the schools, and we're committed to being a good neighbor. So even though any construction process would go through the village's plan commission, we're committed to starting that work earlier. And we've had a lot of conversations with neighbors that are close to these facilities, and we're happy to have more conversations with anybody that we haven't engaged with so that we can really make these buildings work as best as they can, not just for the students and the teachers that are going to work in them every day, but the community at large. So starting with Kipling, we are looking at Kipling looking towards the northeast. And you can see in the kind of tan area and largely in a rectangular shape is the existing Kipling Elementary School. The original portion of the school is the one that is in the southeast corner, and there have been some additions to that building over time. And even though this building is the oldest facility in the district, it's laid out in a way that really lends itself well for student circulation and for meeting the needs of our students and staff and generations to come. So we can save a lot of the existing structure, although that in that existing area, we would be replacing all of the core infrastructure to essentially make it a new facility. Also allows us to knock down walls between classrooms, to move some things within the building to create spaces that we don't currently have. And then by adding an addition to the west, we're able to add an additional multi-purpose room so that Kipling will have a dedicated cafeteria, gym, and a multi-purpose room, and provide spaces for things like music and art that would be relocated so that we can make the classrooms an adequate size. I would note that if we were to proceed with the 3+1 plan, that area where a new construction Kipling could go would be adjacent to Deerfield and Kipling roads and would result in needing to relocate those historic village homes to another area on the property, as well as finding a new location for a district office. At South Park, we're showing an option here where we could create an addition that is to the south and west of the school, immediately adjacent to the two-story wing in the gymnasium that was added just about 25 years ago. That area of the building is in good physical condition. It just needs a bit of a refresh, and it needs a new roof and mechanical systems. But the bulk of the work that needs to happen to the existing school is really on that area that extends to the north and the area that extends to the east. That's the original portion of the school, and it has significant ADA issues along with all those other infrastructure issues. But by having access to that facility for more than a year, we could take care of all of those issues. At Wilmot, we're proposing a new structure school that would be adjacent to Deerfield and Wilmot Road, similar in location to where the district previously had a two-story building that was torn down about 15 years ago. And that would allow the parking lot to then be relocated to where the existing facility is. When we look at a two-story concept here, it allows us to shrink the footprint of the building, which gives us greater opportunity to have traffic queuing on the property, which will help alleviate traffic during the drop-off and dismissal. We have already met with some of the neighbors that are close neighbors to Wilmot, and they've provided feedback on concerns that they have with this, things that they think would be potential opportunities, and our architects are working on a revised concept that we will be sharing with those neighbors, and then it'll be available to the public as well. And this gives you an aerial view of the site. Bit hard to see on this slide, but Kathy has all of these materials on the website as well. but it gives you a sense of where the current building is laid out. So you can see the dashed red line is where the current facility is laid out. And you can see how that articulates with where the new proposed construction would be. And at Walden, we've made a number of updates to this based off of feedback from the neighbors. And here we are looking towards the south and to the west at this property. And the challenge here at Walden is designing a school that can really hug the existing facility, so that that existing facility can stay open to support Walden students throughout its construction, but also serve as a location to house Kipling students when that site is completely gut renovated and added to. And if we look at the aerial view of this one, um, we have more dotted lines here, but what that represents is the different iterations of this plan as it's come to be. So first, in the lower area, kind of shaped a little bit like an airplane with two wings coming out, that dashed red line is the existing location of Walden School, and behind it is a proposed replacement building. The blue dashed line represents the initial concept that was shared, and received feedback from the Walden neighbors on a number of things, including proximity to the property line, a proposed ring road that went around that facility, issues with it all being two-story. And we've made a number of adjustments to that based on the feedback that we've received from Walden neighbors. And we'll continue to make adjustments to that proposed replacement building. So in terms of timeline, um, if the community were to signal, support, the board would consider whether they want to place a referendum on the ballot in March of 2026. They would vote on that in December of 2025, and we would be prepared to begin the middle school construction in June of 2026. That work can be completed in our normal summer construction window. Although there's a lot of work to be done and it will be tight, we believe we can accomplish that in the summer months. So Caruso and Shepherd would not be impacted throughout construction. We would plan to begin construction of the new elementary schools at Walden and Wilmot in the spring of 2027, and those buildings would be open in the fall of 2028 to support students in 28-29 school year. Once those new buildings open, we then begin construction on the renovations at Kipling and South Park, and the students from Kipling and South Park will attend Wilmot and Walden, the old facility, for a year and use that facility to support learning while we get through those renovation processes that really need about 14 to 16 months of time to be in those facilities. We anticipate that all construction will be complete in 2029, such that all students will be back in their new or renovated schools for the 29-30 school year. And then any demolition that needs to occur at the Walden and Wilmot sites will be in phase 4, and we'll be converting that either to green space or to a new parking lot space. Question that's come up when we've done these information sessions is, uh, have our neighbors gone through anything like this before? And the answer is yes. Our facilities are similar age to all of our neighbors, where these communities really boomed in the 50s and early 60s, and now are facing some challenges given the age of those facilities. So our neighbors to the south, Northbrook 27, 28, 30, Glenview 34, Winnetka 36, they've all passed referenda and have gone through combinations of renovations and new construction. Mount Prospects District 57 just passed a referendum with new construction and renovations. Park Ridge 64 went through a similar process, and our neighbors to the east, North Shore 112, are in process and finishing construction at all of their school sites. So I'm going to just pivot now to talk about financing. And one of the things I want to share is that the district is approaching this process really in the strongest financial condition that it could be. So Mike began by sharing about the prior referendum that was in 2005. And that referendum was passed after the district had run 14 years of budget deficits. We're proud that this is the district's 21st consecutive operating budget with a surplus. In 2019, the district was upgraded to a AAA bond rating by Moody's. District has consistently received the highest financial designation from the Illinois State Board of Education. District 109 is one of only 138 districts in the country to receive the Association of School Business Officials Meritorious Budget Award. What that is really a 200-page narrative document that covers everything from taxation to enrollment to prior capital projects to financial projections to annual budget, you name it, anything that has to do with finance in District 109 and operations in District 109 is detailed there. And we submit that to the organization and it goes through a blind peer review process. It's available on our website, so if anybody's interested in the finances of the district, I would encourage you to check that out. And then, of course, the district is audited annually, but we go further when we publish a report that is blind peer reviewed by two different government finance outfits, and we have been awarded the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting for a number of years. When we look at how the district can fund the 2+2 plan, the district can contribute just over half of the funds needed for this plan without referendum. And what that looks like is a combination of two different funding sources. And what's important to recognize is that the district is a tax capped entity. So each year the district goes through a process called the tax levy, and that is how the district requests funds from anybody that's within the district boundaries through taxation. And the district is able to increase its annual levy by the lesser of the consumer price index or 5%. So each year the district is essentially increasing its funding by the consumer price index. Never before, since the early 90s when this law was enacted, did a district hit the cap, but for the last couple of years where we had such high inflation with CPI at 7% and 6.5%. The district has done an admirable job of identifying funds that can be allocated towards capital funds, and has done so through prudent budgeting, but also taking a hard look at programming that it offers and making hard choices about what we want to offer to our families and community, understanding we have significant capital needs. And the district has amassed funds and can contribute funds throughout this process for just over $51.3 million. The district can also issue what are called alternate bonds. Alternate bonds are, think of bonds like a mortgage. It is borrowing funds, but alternate bonds are backed by the district's annual budget. Because the district has been setting aside significant resources to contribute to construction here at the end of the decade, once that construction is complete, the needs for the district to be doing millions of dollars of annual projects to support the continued operation of the facilities, there really won't be that need because all of the aspects that have need to be done will be done. So the district can then pivot towards using those resources to pay bond principal interest on alternate bonds. And that strategy is desirable because it reduces the tax impact of a referendum. But the referendum bonds represent new taxation in addition to the district's annual tax levy. And here we are proposing just over $121 million of referendum bonds. And so that the community can understand the impact that that would have on everybody's unique tax bill, we have a tax calculator on the district website. This is a 25-year issue, meaning that for every $10,000 of property taxes paid, the estimated increase to your bill would be $536. Obviously, you can input this in for your unique tax bill, but that increase would occur and stay on your tax bill for the duration of that 25-year period, and then it comes off the tax bill.
So we've thrown a lot of information at you. John, take a sip of water. And we just wanted to stress that you are part of this conversation. We're glad you're here to listen, but we want to hear from you as well. and we'll do Q&A in just a bit, but we do have what's called the thought exchange that allows you to share your thoughts about what you heard, what questions you still have, and what you want to know. So you can scan this QR code. You can go to the website tejoin.com and enter that code that's there. We also have this on our website at dps109.org/redefine. So you don't have to do it now. You don't have to remember it. You can go to our website and participate anytime. You'll also see we've been putting this out throughout our community engagement information sessions. So you'll see what other community members are asking and saying. And our board members are listening. Our board members are here to hear what the community says, and it's important that you participate. I'm going to bring on Kate Joyce, one of our board members. We can't have all 7 board members here, so that's another reason why we have that thought exchange, so that all 7 board members can hear from you. Kate.
Thanks so much, Kathy. Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Joyce. I'm your 109 secretary and school board member. Just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us this afternoon during your lunch hour. We know you're busy. This is very, very important. And lots of information, as you can see, has been reviewed, has been looked at. No decisions have been made yet. I just wanted to clarify that, as Kathy mentioned, or Mike or John, the board will vote in December whether or not we do put it on the ballot for March. So we want to hear from you. And part of hearing from you is I see some questions popping up in the box, which is awesome. There's a really great website that we have, Redefine 109, that has a lot of the questions that's been asked in these sessions. Keep asking the questions. We want to keep doing the research. And it's a really important time for our kids, our families, and all of Deerfield. And it's a pivotal moment. So we want to hear from you. Thanks.
Thanks, Kate. So what's next? We have one more information session tomorrow at Walden. If you want to hear this again or get a tour, we'll be there at 6:30 tomorrow night. We'll continue to update our website based on the questions we hear today. We have an asked and answered section on the website, and we are answering all questions that come through there. And if you have a question that you want a response for, you can share that and we will get back to you. And then coming next week, we have a mailer going out that includes public opinion polling. And some of you may get text messages as well that come from our polling firm. We want to get valid and reliable data about what the community thinks about all of this information that we have shared. And we want to make sure that you have the information you need to respond honestly and with the information that you need to consider the impact on yourself. So we'll take that data from polling and from all of these information sessions and the feedback we've received. The referendum task force will reconvene to review all of that input. The board will look at all that data, and at their December 18th meeting, the board will make a decision whether or not to put a referendum on the ballot. And if that happens, we'll do this again in January through March. And the district will continue to inform. We don't advocate one way or another. We provide the facts that we have to share with you again. So if this is on the ballot, so that community members can go to the ballot with all the information they need to make the decision that's best for them. Election day is St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 2026. So if there is a referendum on the ballot, that will be election day. We'll share voter information so people know when and where to vote. There will be early voting. But that is where we're headed. And you can, again, visit the website to learn more and ask questions. But right now, I'm going to see what questions we have. And we will get to answers. So, oh, Rosie, we have another, I'm sorry, Rosie, I didn't see you. We have another board member here. Rosie, do you want to say hello and take a minute?
Hey, Kathy. I'm happy to listen. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me today. I'm Rosie Bonner. It is great to be part of these discussions. I've been fortunate to attend a few in person, and just really great to see so many people take time out today during their their lunch hour to um, listen and offer feedback. And so I just really want to thank the administration for the work you guys have been doing. And really, every time I'm in these, I jot down notes and different things stand out all the time. And I want to just think, one of the things you just mentioned, Kathy, is, citizens can advocate and a district can inform. And it's just really good having conversations with all the community members, just getting the feedback and just really processing that and seeing how the renderings have been changing. Just understanding that we are getting the feedback and we are doing the best we can to really be good neighbors. Again, the word neighbors stood out. I mean, John and Mike saying that it's really important because ultimately this is a decision that is going to affect our community in the future. So I just want to thank everybody for being here and thank you guys for having me. And keep asking questions.
Thanks, Rosie. Okay, our first question, and I think this is for John. Does the maintenance only, the 177 million for maintenance over 20 years, consider all maintenance or only capital expenditures? What are the projected savings to maintenance costs over 20 years after a 2+2 plan? So it's a two-part question.
Yeah, I think it depends on how you define maintenance. But generally speaking, when we look at this $177 million, it is contemplating things like replacing, a big portion of it is replacing the retrofitted AC units that were added to the schools that are at end of useful life. That is north of $30 million. It is contemplating things like replacing windows and doors that are at end of life, sections of roofs, flooring, not your typical break fix items, but things that are reaching the end of useful life. So mechanical equipment, et cetera. We do project that once we would complete the 2+2 plan, what is an annual spend that's, typically north of $4 million on these, we call it summer work or summer projects that we cram into 38 days over the summer months, will essentially be going down to next to nothing because we will have addressed all of those issues. So again, that gets back to the financial strategy of issuing those alternate bonds to reduce the tax impact on the community.
And John, what can be done without a referendum? So what levels of improvements or construction or renovation, meaning how much can we put into the current budget?
We can address what we can get to. We can replace HVAC equipment. I will be honest with the community and tell you that it will not function like a renovated facility or a new construction facility, so it will still be challenging. We will do our best with that. We can do things like replacing sections of roofs. We can do things like, renovating, fixtures and bathrooms, et cetera. What we can't do is we can't address our plumbing infrastructure that we can't get to without opening up the buildings in a substantial way. We can't address the ADA shortcomings that require substantial construction. We can't do some of the safety and security improvements that require us to reconfigure the entries to schools, et cetera. And I would add that in that 177 million, I would anticipate the district would have to borrow at some point. So, the district would be issuing alternate bonds at some point to be able to fund the scope of what is needed.
Are there any federal or state credits available to help fund the plan?
On the state side, very little. Potentially some green energy initiatives that may be available in the state. the district does receive state and federal funding. So on the federal side, the district receives funding primarily for special education services. So the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act accounts for the lion's share of the approximately $1 million that the district receives from federal funding. So that all is earmarked for special ed. The district does receive about $2 million from the state in what's called the evidence-based funding, and we have been proactively utilizing those dollars for capital projects and would continue to do so throughout this process. There are some federal grants that survived the latest round in Washington, D.C., particularly around ground source heat pumps. So we're evaluating that technology if that would be something that would make sense for the school district. Of course, we're not just looking at savings that are available. We want to evaluate if that technology will really work to heat and cool the buildings and that we won't be frustrated by that technology. So we have our engineers working on that now.
These are great questions. This is a kind of taxing body question. Why do all school area taxes have to go up when only certain schools need to be rebuilt?
Yeah, the tax rate for the school district is consistent across the community, whether uh, you're within a Wilmot boundary or a Caruso boundary. And there are a number of factors that influence someone's tax bill. So, there can be very unique to every property owner based off of the value of your property, based off of things that have happened within the community. So if you have a specific question, I'm happy to address it individually with folks.
If the referendum fails, what will the district prioritize for improvements in the schools?
Um, Again, I think the biggest pressing issue is going to be mechanical equipment for HVAC. We didn't get an opportunity to do a tour here virtually, but when Tim does his tours across the district, he does a nice job of explaining some of the significant challenges that we have in heating and cooling the facilities. And we would have to do a lot of that work very soon. And we'll do the best that we can, but these retrofitted pieces of equipment on buildings have their shortcomings. And doing this over summer construction periods is limiting to what we can do. And need to be transparent with we have to replace those units. But they're not going to be working like a renovated facility or a new construction facility.
Do we have any feedback from the other nearby districts that recently passed their referendums, both either from the district or the residents? I know some of them are very new and just, from November, so I don't know that we have any feedback there, but yeah, I don't know that we can speak to what other districts are experiencing in their communities. For the schools being replaced, what measures will be taken to ensure there's no toxic dust debris that coats or impacts the surrounding neighborhood or infiltrates into the new school buildings that are so close to the demolition site? So during construction question.
Yeah, I mean, I'll ask if Tim has anything to offer other than, it's typical when you demolish a facility that they will do dust control. So if it's not raining that day, they'll have a truck on site that'll be spraying down that site with water to contain any dust or debris. Tim? I got it.
Yeah, you got it. Nailed it on the head on that one, John.
Another during construction question, what's the plan for parking and traffic at Wilmot during the construction process and prior to demolition of the original building? And I think that can go for Wilmot and Walden.
Yeah, the two campuses on one site is going to be tight. And we're, not minimizing that is going to be a challenge. What that means is that we're going to need to have staggered arrival and dismissal for students and staff at that point in time. And it means that our staff are going to need to be parking largely off-site. So we've been working with our partners at the Village and the Park District about options that will exist for us to accommodate parking, to have some limited parking on site to support, staff and parents and visitors that need to come on site. But we will be working with a traffic consultant, not just on the design of these, parking lots and facilities to improve traffic at the completion, but also to design a plan for the year that two campuses are on one site. Um, and I think the other piece that was discussed is, how do we minimize the impact on the programs and offerings and supports for families and for students? So even though we'll be on one site with two schools, we still are able to accommodate before school and after school care provided by the Park District.
And John, can you talk about the green space plans during construction and how we'll try to provide as much green space as possible during that time?
Yeah, it's a balancing act. So we'll have construction on site, but we will have playgrounds at each of the sites that will be available to students. And we've talked about the possibility of putting some temporary playgrounds and relocating some things. So our students will have access to green space, albeit it will be limited, more so at the Walden site than at the Wilmot site, where the field of the Park District is uninterrupted. But students will still have access to play spaces outside during construction.
A question about back to the steering committee and the options they considered. Did they look into changing individual school boundaries? The point is Walden outgrew their physical structure long before 2023. Was rebounding considered?
Yeah, we did look at rebounding. I think the consensus was that that is a highly divisive issue, and that the consensus was the community really values its neighborhood schools. The community really values that students that, become friends at Walden and Kipling will then go on to be at the same middle school together. And that really was a driving factor behind saying, this is what we believe that the community will support. And I would also add that as we looked at some of those options to downsize from 4 to 3, didn't really save dollars the way that we thought it might, because some of the existing facilities would have to grow so much more. And it's not just adding classroom space, it's adding to the scope of an existing cafeteria such that the existing cafeteria is no good anymore. We have to replace the cafeteria, we have to build a bigger gym, we have to add more parking. And a lot of our campuses being so tight knit in our neighborhoods and our communities just don't support that number of students or staff on site for the long term. We can make it work through a tight construction window, but for decades to come, it didn't seem like the most prudent option.
Talking about our demographer studies, I was surprised to hear that the student populations aren't expected to grow, especially given the new homes being built where Walgreens is located. Did the demographers' projections anticipate any other corporate buildings being rebuilt as single-family homes?
They did, and very good question. If we looked at our projections just a few years ago, they were actually projected to dip below 2,700 students. There are 3 new developments that are contributing to enrollment for the district. One is the LeClaire Estates by Walgreens that was redeveloped into single-family homes. There is also another townhome development that is projected to come online on the other side of the tollway, that will feed into 109 boundaries. And then 109 has a portion of Highland Park that feeds into District 109 as well, where the old Solo Cup factory used to be. That is now being discussed as like I think about 145 townhomes, and about 2/3 of those will be in 109 boundaries. So all of those have been included in our enrollment projections. And then, as we shared earlier, we do this exercise on an annual basis in collaboration with the village. So if there are any other developments, we include those in our projections.
Talking about the maintenance only at 177 million and the over 200 million cost for the other options. Will there be an increase to tax dollars if no plan passes, or are current tax dollars sufficient to cover the buildings we have with the maintenance only?
Yeah, so I talked earlier about how the district levies taxes annually. So we're a tax capped entity, which means the taxes for District 109 grow by the lesser of this consumer price index, or 5%, whichever is less. So we would anticipate that the district's taxes would grow by that lower number, whether it's CPI or 5% year over year. The district does not have sufficient resources to cover all $177 million, especially given, when some of these very, very large bills would come due in terms of replacing all of this mechanical equipment. Could potentially do so without a referendum, but would involve the district taking on new debt to fund some of those that would need to be backed by operating capital.
How do we know that once renovations begin at Kipling, that a 76-year-old infrastructure might not tolerate all the modern updates the district wants? How are we planning for that?
Yeah, I mean, our architect has worked on this. The shell of the building is just fine. So, we're talking about brick, replacing windows, replacing sections of roof. It's really about getting to the components of a building that have a lifespan and that fail, which is your supply piping, your sewer piping. We can do that in a renovation. We can upgrade the electrical service to the building and provide for all of those modern amenities that we would want in that building. So even though we're saving the shell of the building, there's quite a bit that can be done using that existing structure.
Tim, I got a question for you. We keep talking about security. Are our current schools not secure?
Our current schools are secure, but we can always make improvements to our current situation. We're constantly trying to improve what we have.
As indicated by this year, our new check-in kiosks and new visitor management procedures and system that
Correct.
was implemented this year.
It's a constantly evolving section of our little community. So we're constantly improving every chance we can get.
Hey, can I jump in on that question? John, can you talk a little bit about what it means to segment the building and why that's important, and go back to the doors and how we're currently utilizing our doors and how that interrupts instruction?
Yeah, so the recommendation, really a recommendation that came within the last 5 years, and the district has long partnered with outside security experts and made incremental improvements to school safety as school safety changes over time. One of those recommendations is that all classroom doors are closed and locked during instruction. Right now, we have keyed doors in our building, and that means that, when kids are entering or leaving the classroom to go to the bathroom, um, you know, uh, if somebody doesn't, remember to lock the door, that door might be unlocked. Whereas if we switch to a swipe card system, when you swipe in and out, the door is automatically staying locked. And then what it means to segment a building means to look at our ability to, if we lock the facility down, lock off certain areas of the building. And it also means that we have the ability to restrict access from different areas of the facility depending on the time of day, right? So if we're an after hours situation where we have some athletics and extracurricular activity going on, designing the building in such a way that those are not intimate to some of the other instructional needs in the facility so that we have people circulating through those spaces.
Right. Why does Walden need to become a two-level school?
I think we've looked at Walden as, again, Walden's existing footprint is it's about a 55,000 square foot school. It's about 20,000 square feet inadequate to support instruction in that building. And it's a balancing act at that site with growing parking because parking is inadequate, growing the size of the school because the size of the school is inadequate, but also maintaining green space that's usable because it's a park that's intimate to the neighborhood. So it's really a balancing act. I think the proposal that has emerged now includes 1-story and 2-story because of a request from the neighbors to really step back the approach. But we'll continue to work on different iterations of that plan if the community supports moving this direction.
I'm going to talk about swing sites a little bit. Did anyone think about building a new Wilmot and letting Walden students attend the old Wilmot while New Walden is built on its current site, which would extend out the timeline.
Yeah, a common question that's come up is why not just use Wilmot as the only site that accommodates students while the school is being constructed or renovated? That extends the construction window for a number of reasons. So, first and foremost, I think the operational impact is significant. We've heard from Wilmot neighbors that are not enthused about the window of construction that's going to be associated with a construction and then two schools on one site. And certainly from parents' perspective of students that are attending Wilmot, if we use the Wilmot as the only site to accommodate students, we would have students that would be on that site for the majority, if not entirety, of their elementary career, while there was construction or two schools sharing one site. So operationally, it's not tenable. It also increases the price tag. So every year that we extend out construction, it increases our projected costs by 4% due to construction escalation.
Will the village consider this project as whole budget-wise? Is it possible to be mindful of not starting other big projects, park district, library, etc., that may also increase our taxes? Mike, you want to?
Yeah, one of the things that we discuss in the course of this is we communicate with our peers a great deal about what our projects are. Each of the bodies, however, has its own governing body. So the park district has its own board, the library has its own board, and it's not within our purview to stipulate to them what their priorities might be. So I think there's a great deal of mindfulness about not having all these things appear at one time, but there's not the ability to direct those, but there's a great deal of coordination that goes on. While we're informed of what plans people typically have, there's always an attempt to try to stagger things over a period, but we just don't have control over what the other governing bodies may have in their plans.
What voice does the park district have in this process, as the land around the schools is park district land? So we're going to debunk that myth, right?
Yeah, there's one campus, well, two campuses that we have an interesting relationship in terms of how the property is divvied up. Caruso and Walden, the school district owns the property upon which the school rests, but is surrounded by park district property. The other properties are like school district owns kind of a rectangular or square of property that's immediately adjacent to park property, with the exception of Kipling, where the district owns the park area and the school property. So, the voice that the park district has in this process is, interests for how the park at Walden will continue to support and be a park. And so we've had a number of conversations with the park district looking at green space and how that green space would be laid out, how that green space would be drained, how that green space would be accessible, having ADA access to any fields that are there. So they are a voice in this process, just like our neighbors, and finding the right balance for that site.
If Kipling can be renovated, why can't Walden? I think we're going to talk about the footprint and size again, right?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a renovation option for Walden. It just simply does not solve the fact that Walden is so undersized. So there's no good way to go. The building itself has kind of stretched out over any number of iterations of add tos over time, and we can't go up on that existing footprint unless the building were to be knocked down in its current location. So it's really the size issue in particular about Walden and the way that it is laid out.
In the shared campus year, pickup and drop off will obviously be disrupted. But once students are at school in attendance, the day's happening, will their day be disrupted in any way?
No, once school starts, they'll still have access to their normal schedule within the building. There will be playgrounds on site at all of the campuses. Green space may be limited in comparison to what it is currently and what it will be at the other side of construction. But really, this was one of the driving factors behind this being a desirable option versus a renovation and addition only, where we would have students in mobile classrooms moving in and out of the site, was that they're in a school, in a secure facility, that, morning and aftercare can run per usual. The real challenge is getting in and doing drop off and pick up throughout the day.
And that is the end of our questions. But as I put in the chat, John and Mike and I are always available to answer questions. You can submit questions on our website, participate in the thought exchange, look for the mailer and for information about the public opinion poll that will be happening through most of November. And stay tuned to these community conversations. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and we hope to see you soon.